Hello everyone, my name is Emma Bezek, and this is my final project for Dr. Christopher Post's course on human geography. In this narrated PowerPoint, I am going to look at the impact that individuals with special needs have had on the landscape around them. This project is going to look at what the message is that we are communicating to the special needs community through the ways that we alter, build up, and change the landscapes around us. Are we saying inclusion with our mouths, but distancing ourselves with our actions? Even after much improvement regarding awareness and inclusion, do those in the special needs community still feel like outsiders? Or are we changing the environment and community, places, and landscapes around us to make them feel like they belong too? Before I begin the discussion of landscapes and special needs, I want to first establish some definitions. First, when I say special needs, what do I mean? According to the ADA, or Americans with Disabilities Act, a disability is, quote, a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, end of quote. In the most basic sense, someone who has a disability is different from those who are considered, quote unquote, typical, although it is important to consider who gets to determine what is typical. With this said, however, many individuals in the special needs community do not look at their differences as a hindrance or a need. Rather, many people in the special needs community consider their differences as special abilities. And as this last point states, these differences are a part of who these individuals are. The second definition that I'm going to look at is landscape. What do I mean by this? To begin, Dr. Post defined landscape as visual evidence of our culture as displayed on the Earth's surface. As human beings, we reveal what we believe, what we value, what we want to preserve, and pass on to future generations through our impact on the surface of the Earth around us. One human geographer, Richard Shine, who made great contributions to his field, created a framework through which we can interpret the landscape. In his methodological framework, there are 4 steps. These steps are history, meaning, facilitation, and discourse materialized. History is the historical landscape, the historical significance of a landscape, the who, what, when, where, and why. The meaning is why the landscape is significant. Facilitation is the role that the landscape plays in the larger discussions of society, and discourse materialized discusses what those larger discussions are. In keeping with the topic of landscape, this slide shows all the locations that I'm going to be discussing in this presentation. These locations come from Northeast Ohio, all the way up in Ellett, and all the way down to the Norma Johnson Center right outside of Dover. The first type of landscapes that I am going to look at today are those landscapes that have been altered by the presence of handicap signs. This first picture comes from one of the 6 handicap accessible parking lots on Kent State University campus at Stark, which can be found on their accessibility map. These specific parking spaces are maintained and provided by the Student Accessibility Services at Stark. These services take into account every disability from ADHD to deafness to blindness and provide the necessary accommodations. The meaning of this landscape is best summed up in the vision of the Student Accessibility Services at Kent Stark, which is, quote, to advance the holistic success of students with disabilities by creating intentionally designed physical, educational, and interpersonal experiences, end of quote. This landscape is a facilitator of a student with disabilities' overall educational well-being. This landscape enforces the importance that education has for individuals. This next picture that we are going to look at comes from the Norma Johnson Center. This wonderful center is dedicated to preservation and conservation. Located just outside of Dover, Ohio, this center is committed to giving access to nature to everyone. The best example is on one of their beautiful trails titled Preservation Loop. Along this trail, an accessible pathway has been placed that extends from the parking lot to a quiet fishing dock. This has made it easier for those with limitations to access the fishing pond. The meaning of this landscape is reflected in the belief that drives what they do. They, quote, believe access to nature is a right, not a privilege, so the trails are free and open to all, end of quote. This landscape acts as a facilitator of an effort to improve the physical well-being of an individual with a disability. This slide looks at the intersection of special needs and development geographies, or economic landscapes. The first example comes from an ATM at Fifth Third Bank and ATM in North Canton, which provides audio assistance for those who are blind or have difficulty reading standard print. According to the American Foundation for the Blind, these adaptations made to the ATM make it a talking ATM, which provides its users with easy access, making it possible for them to independently and reliably fulfill their monetary purposes. The meaning of this landscape aligns with the purpose of the ADA, which, quote, prohibits discrimination and guarantees that people with disabilities have the same opportunities as everyone else to participate in the mainstream of American life, end of quote. Money and equalized, reliable, convenient access to it is a part of daily life that everyone should have access to. This landscape acts as a facilitator in that it is reinforcing the importance that money has on an individual's life, and that everyone, in this case specifically those who are blind or have a hard time seeing, should have equal access to what is their own. This next landscape that I am going to talk about is a little organization called XXL. This specific branch pictured here is one of the 4 locations for their day hab locations. This business is committed to providing adults with a developmental disability a job where they can be paid the minimum wage for their services. This company is also committed to embracing the concept of person-centered planning, which is the process of selecting services and supports for an adult to live in a community. The important component is that this process is headed up by the person receiving the support. The meaning of this landscape is that it is intended to provide quality services for individuals with a developmental disability. The purpose of this landscape is to help improve their lives and help them become integrated into the community. This landscape acts as a facilitator in that organizations like Excel provide a platform where individuals with a developmental disability can share with the world the unique gifts, talents, and skills that they have to offer. This next landscape that I am going to look at is the playground in Veterans Park in Plain Township. Founded in 2006, this park provides an adaptive playground for children with disabilities and their caregivers to play on. The meaning of this landscape can be seen on the value that Plain Township puts on the outdoors through its outdoor recreation. And as displayed in their parks, they believe that these spaces should be available for everyone. They state that their parks offer both passive and active recreation for all ages and abilities. Why is this important? What is this facilitating? Well, in a world where often children with special needs must experience things such as hardships, loneliness, or prejudice in the face of their special ability, these spaces give children and young adults the opportunity to play like children are supposed to. They also facilitate a safe place for children who do not have a disability to have the opportunity to interact with others that are different than them. This next landscape is an intersection between religious geographies and special needs. This is the Deaf Outreach Church right outside of Green. This church holds to the Christian belief as taught in the Bible. And while most of its congregation is predominantly deaf, both deaf and hearing are welcome. An important belief held by the congregation of this church is that the teachings of Jesus of the Bible should be brought to those who have not heard. This landscape is significant because it is a space of worship specifically geared towards those who are deaf, apart from the rest of mainstream culture. This landscape helps play a larger role in facilitation in that it provides the deaf community with a place of worship, and it reminds those not a part of this community that individuals with special abilities have beliefs and convictions too. This landscape is Gegis Playhouse in Canton, a local chapter of a national nonprofit organization. This organization is committed to helping children and adults with Down syndrome reach their full potential, whether that is through support groups, a safe and accepting place to play or have fun, educational and therapeutic programs, or career development programs. The purpose and meaning behind Gegis Playhouse is to reinforce the message that individuals with Down syndrome, or DS, are worthy of love and acceptance and deserve a healthy and thriving life. This landscape facilitates discussion and education about DS, which little by little is changing the way that people view Down syndrome. This landscape provides the DS community with a voice, services, and a place of belonging. To a community that often feels left out, this is a place made especially for them, where they can be the people they are with the gifts that they have, instead of someone with a disability. This last example looks at the intersection between special needs and agricultural geographies. The Gentle Brook Farm is a greenhouse, nursery, and farm program, which provides individuals with developmental disabilities a unique working environment. The organization of Gentle Brook is committed to understanding and advocating that life is sacred and should be cared for through purpose and a place in a community. This particular landscape acts like a facilitator in that it provides a place for the developmental disability community to be connected to agriculture and the earth and learn how to grow and care for food that they can feed themselves and others with. The last step in Richard Schein's methodological framework is Discourse materialized. This is looking at all of these landscapes in the context of larger issues and questions. What do these landscapes that were discussed in this presentation tell us about the special needs community and the mainstream cultures, those without special needs, response to it? Pierce Lewis was quoted to have said, "Human landscape is our unwitting autobiography, reflecting our tastes, our values, our aspirations, and even our fears in tangible, visible form." With this being said, what is this generation's biography to the next generation regarding the topic of special needs? Is this present generation passing down a world that has been modified and adapted so that those who have different abilities can access it too? Are we passing down a biography where we advocated for those that could not always speak for themselves, even down to the very things we did with our ATMs or the changes we made to something as mundane as parking spaces? Did we care enough to go out of our way so that others could have the access we possess every day of our lives? My consensus is that there has been a vast majority of improvement, even in the last 30 years, but we have not arrived yet. There are many good organizations and modifications to the landscape that have taken place already, but we are not finished, and the moment we think we have arrived is the moment we lose the ground we have worked hard to gain. There are many individuals with special abilities that can contribute greatly to the world around them. It is time that they are given the opportunity to use them. Before I go, I want to introduce you to someone with a special ability. This is my brother. He was born with Down syndrome. As his sister, I have watched him grow and struggle to grasp living in a mainstream society. Often, there are places that are too overstimulating for him. He dislikes loud sounds. Technically, in the 2nd grade, he is still learning how to jump. It can be difficult for him. But as I have watched him grow, I have also seen how well he loves others. How much delight he gets out of the little things, such as books or dandelions. How he cares for others, especially when they are sad. It is time for the rest of us who do not have a special ability to advocate for those who do. These are gifts worth sharing, and therefore we need to help these special people be able to share them.